Today on the show, we'll dive into three major shifts shaping the MSP and tech world. First, the AI skills debate. Is artificial intelligence really empowering non-skilled workers or just supercharging those who already have expertise? Then, the rise of the security-first MSP, where cybersecurity isn't just a part of the service, but the core business itself. And finally, are SMBs ready for AI-powered cyber attacks? The latest research says many aren't, and the old playbook won't cut it. Carolyn April and Seth Robinson are joining me today. It's Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025, and I'm Dave Sobel. Welcome to the Business of Tech Lounge, the live version of the Business of Tech podcast. We'll take questions and comments throughout the show, so please submit them in the chat. If you have a question, we'll happily respond to it. I want to thank Sales Builder, a Business of Tech Plus supporting vendor. Focus on your IT sales workflow with the power of automation and visit them at salesbuilder.com. That's BUILDR.com. And live stream support is provided by Rhythms, delivering 5G connectivity solution for MSPs. Reliable internet access for everyone. Visit rythmz.com for more information. I am watching that chat. Take those questions and throw them in the chat. We'll take them anytime over the course of the show. Carolyn April is the Vice President of Research and Market Intelligence at the Global Technology Industry Association, or GTIA, where she leads research into the technology channels, business models, emerging services, and partner ecosystem dynamics. Prior to GTIA, she spent nearly 15 years at CompTIA, where she oversaw flagship industry and channel reports and helped advise MSPs, vendors, and distributors on market trends. She's a frequent flyer on the live show. Carolyn, welcome back.
Hello. So good to be here. Great to see you again, Dave.
Great to see you too. And I'm looking for her good friend, Seth Robinson, who is Vice President of Industry Research at CompTIA, where he leads analysis on technology trends, workforce dynamics, and the evolving managed services landscape. He oversees CompTIA's annual IT industry outlook and state of cybersecurity reports, providing data-driven insights and guides for MSPs and technology leaders in strategic planning. He is also a good friend to the show. Seth, nice to have you back.
Hey, is this the 1978 #1 hit by Peaches and Herb? Because the volley team is reunited and it feels so good.
It feels so good. You're right. I know. I'm so happy to be back. It's been a long time, my friend, here. Almost a year that we've been not doing our sidekick buddy volley podcast, but I'm so happy that Dave has brought us back together again.
Yes. Thank you, Dave.
Well, it felt natural, and I knew that we had a couple of topics that you two were the right combination to have. So when they come up, felt like this was a good space to be able to do a little bit of that mixing it up. So I got to bring it up because, Seth, you, as we were planning for this, you brought up your latest hobby horse, and it challenges kind of a populative narrative here. Is our organizations truly using AI to enable non-skilled workers to perform skilled work? Or is AI mostly a tool for skilled professionals to extend and augment their expertise? I kind of had to throw it to you because I figured you'd been thinking about this. I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I was at a GovExec event in DC a little while ago, and I think we could almost have a little bit of a debate about how much are organizations really using AI to begin with. But if we put that aside, to the extent that they're using it, I think this has been a question on a lot of our minds from the beginning is what is AI actually going to do in the workplace, in an enterprise environment, outside of the consumer space where people can do party tricks with these chat GPT and Claude and everything else. When it comes to a business environment and people are applying their skills and knowledge to do daily tasks, where is the place of AI? And I'm sure that there's going to be a spectrum of answers here, but it feels to me like the center of gravity is quite a bit more towards hearing people say that their skilled people are using AI to extend their skills. They are not near a place, they're not really exploring a place where they're trying to have AI just do the job of somebody else or have somebody that's only skilled in AI do that job. You need a cybersecurity professional to set up AI to do cybersecurity tasks. You need a data analytics professional to set up AI to do data analytics. And so I think that this whole discussion around AI skills really has to start with what are the fundamental skills of any given job role, whether that's in technology or we're talking about accounting or legal or something else. And then it gets extended from there.
Carolyn, I'm sure you've got some thoughts and research as you've been looking into this.
I do. I mean, Seth is coming at this from the perspective of the IT professional, an individual job holder. I'll kind of look at it as the channel would look at AI today, and the way I kind of look at the channel is by their own demographics. And if you look at one of the larger ITSPs out there, those companies probably fall into the same usage pattern with AI that what Seth is describing. So they would have more highly skilled people on staff anyway, who are at the mid-tier to higher skilled echelons of whatever technology discipline it is, whether they're in data, whether they're in cybersecurity, and they would be using AI to extend the skills that they already have or are applying to the work they do for customers and perhaps the work that they do in-house as well. If you take a look at the smaller end of the scale, and that's most of the channel, so most small MSPs, small solution providers, I would say that they are doing very little with AI today, and they're almost in the party tricks bucket, honestly. So a lot of the people, even though they are technologists, many of their individual technologists are at the level of experimenting with AI in a way that sort of makes them a little bit more productive. It doesn't necessarily the way that I would in my job or anybody who uses it to kind of help them get something done faster or a little bit better, or it's as a sidekick, and I would say for the smaller channel firms, that's definitely the case and isn't necessarily that extension of somebody who is already pretty versed in the fundamentals and the basics, pretty in some sort of mid-career role and using AI at a more sophisticated level to extend what they already do. So I would say that you could make a comparison between the small end of the channel company scale with entry-level career people on the IT pro side.
It's interesting because the AI is almost doing too much lifting in terms of meaning. Because David Artur was breaking down, he distinguishes between AI as an automation tool, which the idea there is to eliminate expertise, versus a collaboration tool, which amplifies expertise, right? And those are two different uses of AI, and I'm putting that in quotes. And many times we're implying generative AI with a lot of this discussion because immediately we get to the consumer stuff. It's like, oh, that's what's going on with chatbots. That's what's going on with pieces. I know, myself, I don't mind saying that there is a lot of AI in what I'm doing in terms of prep, but I use it as a transformation tool. For example, I'll write a particular piece or do particular research, and then generative AI will transform that into 5 other formats. Make this a LinkedIn post, make this take my talking points in a meeting and make a new article out of that. That's that accelerator. You both spend some time, I know, Seth, you in particular think about this, and I think about it from workforce trends, and Carolyn and I, you're doing it from a channel perspective. Are there particular areas here or relevant evidence of enabling non-skilled workers to perform skilled workers? Is that turning up, or are we finding a lot of the evidence in those already skilled workers?
Well, I think that your example is a great one, right? That, you described, at a high level, some of the things that you're doing with AI. That's very different from someone saying, make me Dave Sobel to an AI chatbot, right?
Yeah. But nobody wants that. But
And you also talked about the difference between automation and collaboration. And automation is something that companies have wanted for a long time now. If we could talk about robotic process automation or using APIs or stitching tools together. All of these things have been available, but it's not like you can just snap your fingers and all of a sudden you've got automation going. And I think a large reason for that is that we're not talking about a single task. We're usually talking about a task that happens in the context of a given business day with a million other things happening, and you need to react to it. So you've got all of these different variables complicating the situation. And none of this is to say that this is the way that it's going to be forever. I am just saying that this is the way it seems to be right now, and we're already 3 years into this journey. And there's a lot of talk out there about the things that AI could do, but I think that businesses are struggling to do those things for a couple different reasons. One is If they're just having their individual employees each use some kind of chat feature on their own, then that has limited functionality, and then you get into this skills problem. If trying to integrate some of this AI into a workflow and be smart about that workflow, all of us have seen several different technologies come and go because it relies on workflow transformation, which relies on actually understanding that workflow and having the data to describe that workflow. It seems like this magical thing, and there's a lot of power and promise behind it, but it does take quite a bit of investment in time, energy, understanding the data, the skill to do these things. And at some point, businesses need to see a return on those things.
Carolyn, you want to weigh in on sort of some of the channel research you've been looking at?
Sure. So, I would agree that that I think the idea of understanding process and workflow is going to be fundamental to real rollouts of AI that are not individual uses. We've done a couple of surveys. We did an in-house survey just of our own staff about AI usage. We've extended one to our membership. We've obviously done some bigger studies on AI. And what we're finding is there are two silos right now. There's like organizational use of AI, and that is really not figured out yet for a lot of companies, including channel firms. Then there's individual use. So are your employees more emboldened? Are they more productive? Are you letting them play around with things that are like making their work better? That's happening. It's not necessarily happening in any way that you could put an umbrella over it and say, look what we've done as a company. You've got, people doing individual things. The organizational stuff, was talking to an AI expert in the UK just last week, and he goes around and advises small channel companies about this. His take is until, to Seth's point, you really figure out what your workflows are and what your processes are. And many of these companies really have no idea. There's not a lot of documentation. It's just, this is how we do it, but we actually never wrote it down. And, when we get new employees, we just tell them this is how we do it, and it's never written down. And so it takes the exercise, painful as it might be, to go through all of that very drudge type work, where if you figure out what step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is in every workflow. And until you do that, the application of any kind of AI, whatever it is, you can't really say that it is an organizational application of that technology. And that's sort of what we're seeing. So regardless of the fact that we've been in this for 3 years, and I think Seth will agree with me on this because we've agreed on this kind of tech cycle on other things as well, is that for all the hype, we're still, we're really still formative, I think, at this point. And you can hear other people say otherwise, but I'm not buying it.
Oh, I like that you're not necessarily buying it. So I'm going to throw a last premise here then, because Carolyn, what you've just described, like in the idea of being very workflow enabled and defining your process, in theory, managed service providers specifically should be quite good at this.
Oh,
because we're all saying should, right? The idea is they should be very good at this. They should be very SOP, standard operating procedure driven. They should be very procedural in the way they think. That should lend itself very well to this idea of full automation. Are we potentially exposing that this portion of the market may not be as good as the things they should be by their slowness to move on this? Or is it the technology itself not being ready for that? Do either of you have a sense of that readiness?
I think it 100% is going to expose companies. I mean, I have touted, and many other people who talk to MSPs, the importance of process and workflow for those types of business models. You would know better than anything, Dave. You had an MSP. Is that efficiency is the name of the game. Just take AI out of the discussion for now at all. This predates AI altogether. But you need to be repeatable and scalable and as efficient as possible with all of those customers that you're taking care of, because customized one-off treatment of customers is a fail as an MSP. You need to be able to do this on a repeatable scale so that your margins are good and you're able to make as much money as possible operationally. So a lot of MSPs talk about that, and they talk a good game, and then they often will then lament the fact that they're not making as much money as they wish they were making. And why is that? And it's usually because they're not operationally efficient. We can also say it's also because they don't price right too, but that's a whole other discussion. But a lot of it has to do with operational efficiency. And so I think the fact that effective use of AI is going to absolutely mandate that workflow is efficient and process is figured out, is going to force their hand this time. They can't get away with things where they may have been getting away with them in the past. And so a lot of MSPs are going to have some navel gazing to do and, sort of figure out, oh, we thought we were good at this, or we've been saying that we're good at this, but we're really not. So now's a good time for us to get our house in order. And I think that's why I think we're still formative with AI, because I think a lot of these companies are going to spend a year or so cleaning up a mess that they didn't need to face before, but now will have to face.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think that's true at an internal IT department for an organization as well. I think the biggest thing that is happening for a lot of these, MSPs or IT departments right now is complexity has grown tremendously. And I think a lot of times we want to act like any technology is just a one-off. Let's go over here and figure out cloud. Let's go over here and figure out AI. The reality is all of these things are additions to the technology stack. And so the technology stack that you're managing now is very different from the technology stack that you were managing 10 or 20 years ago. And I don't think a lot of organizations, either MSPs or standalone end user organizations, are really taking account of that. And I think that complexity is going to need to be addressed and unraveled. And everyone has wanted to go through digital transformation, and that's just added more complexity. There's not an easy button at the end of all of this to make it right and to just make IT automatic and work well. And the last thing that I'll say on this whole topic that I think has muddied the waters this year is the economic uncertainty. I think there are so many reports of workforce reductions, and AI gets used as part of the reasoning for the workforce reduction. The reality is it's economics, right? And a business unit isn't performing. A business is feeling uncertainty. They're reducing their forecast for the future. They don't have AI up and running so that AI is running their call center, but they're going to get rid of a couple hundred, 1,000 people. And they're going to say, hey, yeah, we're really using this fancy new AI, so don't worry about us. I think that has really complicated the picture this year. And I don't know exactly what that means heading into the future. I think the labor market is probably still going to be tight and tricky for a while, because I don't think the uncertainty is going away anytime soon. And maybe the technology does catch up and provide a benefit, but we've seen this, Carolyn, you talked about all these cycles that we've talked through. It's inevitably companies jumping forward and then having to take 2 steps back because they don't realize what the investment really requires.
It's interesting you bring that up, and I'll throw in before I pivot, because you brought up business models. I'm dying to latch into that next. I was having a conversation this weekend with a professor at a world-class computer science department, and they were talking about the hiring of students coming out of school, and that the feedback that they were getting through their hiring program is that exactly what you were just saying, Seth, is that there's a lot of business holdback on both hirings and reason to lay off, and AI is being used as the reason. But that's not the actual reason. The actual reason, because they're telling those recruiting orgs at universities, don't worry, we will be hiring again. We're just talking about this now. But we could go more on this. I want to talk about something else a little bit, because I promised some non-AI stuff. I got to bring up cybersecurity. And the context here is that Cork put out their SMB Cyber Defense 2026 report, and they highlighted in it that managed service providers must treat cybersecurity as a core business risk, not just an IT function. And they proposed the idea of the security first MSP. They made the mistake of calling it MSP 3.0, which would be further back than the MSP 5.0 someone else recently put out in the MSP 4.0 that was talked about 4 years ago. But putting all that aside, what I wanted to talk about was, what do you two think this means for the business models of IT services and managed service providers if security moves in as a core function and not something else you sell? Carolyn, do you have thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of a cybersecurity study right now of channel firms. And, so but this, when you're talking about cybersecurity first, you don't mean that it has to be the lead item in their portfolio that they're selling, but that they have to focus on cybersecurity first in some way internally. I want to make sure I understand what the mandate is here.
Yeah, I mean, the research that Cork did is essentially saying that you can't sell it as an add-on. You can't come it back. That the expectation is simply you have to deliver cybersecurity as part of the core IT function.
Okay, well then we got some issues because I've got some data I actually could throw out, like right here.
Woohoo!
Yeah, no, it's in front of me somewhere. But we asked that question. We asked, like, where does cybersecurity fit in your, in the focus of your entire business? So thinking about your business in aggregate, how do you describe the piece of it that is cybersecurity? And only about a third, not even 3 in 10, describe it as core. And core would be as strategic. It's, one of the primary things we sell. It is not an add-on. It is not what has been historically, something that an infrastructure MSP tacks on, or a solution provider is, yes, we have, an AV solution or a firewall that goes along with the bundle of the stuff that we really sell you. And so only 3 out of 10 said that it is a core strategic part of what they do. And those are the folks that are making the most money with cybersecurity. They're investing a lot in it. They lead with it in many cases. Most of the respondents to our study identified as, general integrated IT providers where cybersecurity is a complementary piece of what they do. They consider it more than tactical. So I wouldn't call that group an add-on. And that's about 50%, 40%. But then the rest are doing no cybersecurity whatsoever. So you've got a good amount, over 20%, that don't touch cybersecurity in any way. And these are MSPs. So they've got an issue that they're going to have to address. But many of them refer out. And I wonder if this mandate accounts for that. There are a lot of folks in the channel who don't do cybersecurity as their main expertise, but have really good partners on hand where they refer out on a regular basis, and their customer doesn't know the difference. The delivery is being done by this other company, but they're the face to the customer, and they're getting good cybersecurity service because this company that doesn't do cybersecurity is using a good partner. If that model is sufficient for, and falls under the auspices of this legislation or mandate or whatever it happens to be, then I think people are going to be in good stead. But I think we're seeing a time where you can really no longer, as a channel company, not have cybersecurity be a strategic part of your company, whether it is what you do internally or whether or not you're working with a partner that is all cybersecurity and they're dealing with the delivery of the services for you. So this could definitely shake up the space, especially for smaller MSPs, where this is hard to take on. Advanced cybersecurity technologies. We're not just talking about some of the basics anymore, but there's, the plethora of different technologies and vendors out there, and getting to know and understand how to sell, deploy, and manage those things is a high bar for a lot of small companies.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. I'm really glad that you've got some data there showing that, because, Dave, when you introduced this, the way that it struck me was that an end user, a standalone organization, they don't touch technology without knowing what the cybersecurity implications are. So from an end user perspective, I think that this makes sense. But at the MSP level, I don't think it makes sense for every MSP to be able to talk through all the cybersecurity implications. I think that onus still lies with the end user. And obviously, this is going to be situational. If you've got a really small end user working with a single, really small MSP, and that's their one-stop shop for all things technology, then that end user is going to expect that person has, that MSP has all the cybersecurity answers, and they're not going to. But I also don't think that, like, if you started going up the stack there, I don't think a medium-sized organization could expect even a medium-sized MSP to speak to all of the technology that's being employed and all of the interactions and all of the cybersecurity implications.
Right.
I do think for end users, cybersecurity is a business imperative. It's on the order of like finance and legal in terms of like, we need this running right in order for our company to be healthy. But I don't think that necessarily means that it's going to be the first thing that they expect out of any MSP. And Carolyn, you and I have talked for quite a while about the state of partnering among MSPs. And I think a lot of end users are gravitating towards that model too, that they're not using a single person to fulfill all their needs. And especially when it comes to cybersecurity, maybe they do have what we used to call an MSSP. Are we now calling it MSP 3.0 or maybe MSPX or something like that? But I think a lot of them try to build a center of competence internally because it's so important and because they've got their fingers in a lot of different technology pies and they're using a lot of different MSPs or partners or this whole network of organizations, and they don't necessarily expect someone externally to have all those answers. Now, it depends on what kind of MSP someone's wanting to build. If they want to be somebody that's acting as a virtual CIO or a virtual CISO, then sure, they're going to have to really be up to speed on it. But to your point, Carolyn, I don't necessarily think that everyone out there wants to do that or needs to do that.
No, they definitely not. And I'll bring up this point. I talked to the data from the UK was similar to what I just shared with you. Only 3 in 10 have cybersecurity as a core discipline, and a huge percentage are not doing it at all. And I was talking to people there when I was in England last week, and they were saying because of some of the regulations and accountability on the law books there about the liability issues around cybersecurity, there are a lot of MSPs that don't want to touch cybersecurity there. They would just rather say that is not my wheelhouse. If I just bring even a little bit of it into it, people are going to assume I'm an expert. And if anything goes wrong, I am going to be on the hook because of these various regulations, compliance demands, different liability issues. And they don't want to face that. They're small companies. A fine of a certain order could put them out of business, and they just don't want to touch it. It's a third rail kind of thing, and they don't want to touch it. And I can understand that from a lot of small companies. So I wonder, even here in North America, if that's the case too. It's like, that's just an area I don't want to get into. If they're forced to, I just don't see how that's going to work out.
Well, okay, so now I have the interesting question of, Seth brought up the perspective that I thought was most interesting from the customer. So the customer both needs this and has an expectation that they're going to get assistance with it. And I think there's sort of a sliding spectrum of how much assistance. The smaller you are, probably the more you want that completely outsourced. I know we're having a lot of these conversations around co-managed these days. It seems to be the new buzzword I hear. And I just look at that and say, the larger an organization gets, the more they have some expectation of bearing some of the load. Sure. I don't think this is necessarily new. I just think this is, we've now given it a name. But this expectation has always been there. The customer always needs it. The question is how does it get delivered? And Carolyn, you're sort of implying that, particularly in the smaller, they may say, hey, we're going to deliver it with a partner. We're going to not necessarily own it. The need is there. It has to get solved through the partner. They may not be delivering it, but the end customer doesn't care. And as you go up, there's some association of that risk. Is that a reasonable framing of it?
I think so. Okay. I don't know that you can completely untouch cybersecurity, but I think to set the point that organizations themselves have to own this because in some ways, because they are, that much larger and they have so many other systems that are running at the same time, that if you're an MSP who is taking some responsibility for certain part of the IT within your customer, you're not touching it all. Maybe you don't touch any of the applications and you're just dealing with infrastructure and network. Then there's no way that you can, with any certainty, say I can do your cybersecurity, because you don't know what those other systems and applications are that need to also be tapped into and integrated and secured. So it does have to be. I like the co-managed concept of this. Now, I don't know how many IT departments and MSPs are all working in harmony together, and I'd like to think more than I know. But yeah, I think that the premise is good there, Dave.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, Dave, the thing that jumps out to me is like, I do think that there is probably a greater degree of cybersecurity fluency needed across the board to kind of be able to say, we don't know what we don't know, or here's where you should go for those, right? To just be able to kind of raise your hands and say, we don't do cybersecurity, you're going to have to go somewhere else. That is probably not sufficient.
That is not a good business strategy.
Have you thought through these cybersecurity things? We don't handle them, but we'd be glad to try to help you find someone that does. That seems like a reasonable ask. And again, I think for end users, they probably have to up their cybersecurity fluency, right? And I'm kind of gravitating now towards the last topic that you were going to talk about, Dave, the SMB end, because a lot of these discussions, and this one in particular, I think are completely different if you're talking about a very small business versus a huge enterprise. And on this very small business side, which, like you said, Carolyn, that's where a lot of MSPs are. That's where a lot of end users are. That's, most of the economy is made up of these tiny businesses. And to bring it full circle, does AI help solve this? And you can sort of see where it's like, not really, right? Because if you've got a end user that doesn't quite know what they're talking about, get together with an MSP that doesn't know what they're talking about, and the MSP's like, hey, let me chat GPT, give me a cybersecurity strategy for this company. And they both look at it and they're like, is that good? No, I don't know, right? There has to be some foundational skill to start from, some fluency. And then beyond that, then you need to get into the operational skill. And again, it's okay if that small MSP doesn't have that, but they have to at least be able to guide that conversation and point someone in the right direction.
Well, the line is blurred a little bit on the conversation, so I definitely want to bring in the SMB piece as the final piece of our discussion here. Like, I feel like directionally it's all consistent. It's just your strategy for engaging will change based on the size of the customer. At all levels, this is a need. Somebody has to fill it. I think I would question any provider that's sort of saying, "Oh, I'm just not going to touch it," and then Seth, to your point, is like, if everybody's just looking confused, that's an opening for somebody to come in and say, well, we can solve that problem. And by the way, we're going to do all your other things too. Isn't ultimately this about defining the role of the trusted advisor? It's totally cliche. We have to recognize that. But every business at this stage, particularly a small one, is going to need that advisor to be guiding them, even if they're not doing it. So does that address the way that this should be solved in your mind, Seth?
Yeah, that is kind of a charged term to use, right? But I think that's directionally appropriate, like you're saying, and cybersecurity is a huge space. Does it mean that you have all the answers or that you can always point them in the right direction? I don't think so, but can you at least be like one step ahead of them? Can you kind of help them start to figure out which questions they should be asking and maybe kind of partner with them along the way? I think that's reasonable, right? And that's kind of a fuzzy definition. That's not exactly a guidebook for how to become cybersecurity fluent as an MSP, but I think that's generally what we're talking about here is having a little bit more awareness of this, and not just saying I'm only the network guy or I'm only the laptop guy, and that's all that we do here. I think understanding what this space is and being able to introduce the concept of risk management and evaluating investments against risk mitigation. Those types of things, I think, might be starting to become table stakes.
I 100% agree. I don't think you can be an MSP today and sidestep the conversation of cybersecurity because I just don't do that. I think it is completely fair to not present yourself as the expert, though. And I think that's okay. I think customers can digest that information. You do not have to be, the cybersecurity maven. But if you go in and you make sure that you talk about cybersecurity, you recognize and explain to the customer that it's something that needs to be considered. And then you have to have that conversation like, we can take care of this. You don't even have to necessarily get into the details of, we got this guy, it's like somebody like, I got a guy, we have this other firm, they deal with our cybersecurity for us. You can assure a customer, I think, in a way that doesn't make them feel like, you're just like kicking the responsibility to somebody else that they never talked to. But sticking your head in the sand or just not taking the business or telling them up front that you just don't do this, that's just a recipe for, a failed business, honestly, at the end of the day, because cybersecurity has become such an imperative that it can't be ignored no matter what size you are, no matter what your capabilities are. It's all in the messaging. You got to figure out how to message correctly to the customer.
Well, there is the piece that everyone needs to know is, you can't ignore it. You're allowed to come up with other answers to it, but you can't ignore it. I knew this. I knew having the two of you on would be fun for these kinds of conversations. I could go all this time, but I need to be respectful of both your and the audience's time. I'm going to ask each of you, what's the best way to get in touch if listeners are interested in following up and getting additional insights or research? Carolyn, what's the best way to reach out?
Find me at my email, capril@gtia.org. Reach out anytime with any question. Happy to talk to you. I love to hear from people out in the industry.
And what research have you got coming out?
Cybersecurity. So look for that in mid to late November. It is called Channel Trends in Cybersecurity 2025. and it will touch on some of the things we talked about here today and much more. So
awesome. And Seth, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
So for me, you can email me at srobinson@comptia.org. You can check out our website for our research. We just published our state of cybersecurity, which is that end user perspective. And before the end of the year, we're hoping to have our IT industry outlook.
Well, I look forward to all of those. There'll be coverage on the Business of Tech, of course. And I look forward to having you both back on for the occasional reunion shows so that we can have a little bit of fun and mix it up.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you both. And I want to let my listeners know I've got another interview coming up with Tammy Kennerzino, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at Thrive. We sat down and discussed the company's strategic pivot from legacy Yellow Pages advertising to SaaS-enabled platform that empowers small businesses through AI-driven marketing solutions. We talked about the importance of meeting small business owners where they are, leveraging AI for customer engagement, and the necessity of a personalized approach to drive growth and retention. Here's a preview of that interview. Because we got to bring up AI real fast when we talk about marketing, because it seems like many of the use cases that people talk about for AI, particularly generative AI, are related to marketing. Talk to me around where you're seeing this AI impact on small businesses. Like, where is the impact? What are the barriers? And what's being successful right now?
Very true. Well, everyone's interested in AI, including small business owners. We surveyed our small business owners, and our index said that there are 40% more small business owners are using AI than they did last year. And so we do really feel it's starting to get traction, and marketing is a great use case for AI, and particularly in being found online. So we help those small business owners to be found online in the LLMs. And there are simple ways to do that, like, the website having the right information to be found on the LLMs, to be crawled, like making sure you have fact sheets, making sure you have fresh content. Believe it or not, basic table stakes, making sure your listings are updated. These LLMs like factual information. And so we work with small business owners on making sure it's similar to an SEO practice. We call it an AEO practice, that they can be found within the LLMs, because more and more of those clicks, as we know, are going to, or they're not going to your brand landing page. They're staying within the LLMs. And so working with our small business owners to be cited within marketing. Another component of AI is making sure that your website is fresh and your data is fresh, and that you are responding to reviews. And so we actually have our Thrive product actually has an AI agent that can help you to immediately respond to good or bad reviews to make sure that your website is fresh and stays current and relevant.
Now, I'm kind of intrigued. So that feels like a large overarching strategy that most businesses do, but some businesses are also in the business kind of content generation, unique publication. Like, do their considerations end up looking a little different than the universal? Like, how do you understand who's right for some of these AI strategies and who might be wrong for them?
I may not be 100% right, but my personal opinion is that the consumer behavior is moving to an LLM model. So, consumers are actually driving the move to AI. They no longer want to go to 10 different websites when an LLM can pull those top 10 websites and do the research for you. And so, in that way, I do think that all businesses will need an AI strategy, because, that's how consumers want to interact with your web. Even your website, the movement will be that consumers will want to come to your website and find answers like it's an LLM. So literally a search engine within your website. And so, I actually don't believe there's any getting around it. And so we're really trying to help small business owners to lean into it, and to really be able to use it to leverage their ability to drive marketing and drive growth for their businesses.
Business of Tech Plus subscribers get interviews and the dynamic ad-free version of the show delivered early right to their podcast player. It's a benefit of supporting the show. Visit businessof.tech/plus to sign up and get that early access. The interview will be released for everyone on the weekend. Now, I want to thank Sales Builder, a Business of Tech Plus supporter. Focus on your IT sales workflow with the power of automation and visit them at salesbuilder.com. That's BUILDR.com. Our live stream support is provided by Rhythms, delivering 5G connectivity solutions for MSPs. Reliable internet access for everyone. Visit rythmz.com for more information. Vendors, you too can get your name mentioned on the live show. It's part of our vendor support level of Business of Tech Plus. You can just sign up right at the show link there at businessof.tech/plus. And if you'd like to support the show and get even more from the Business of Tech, check out our membership options at businessof.tech/plus. There's a free tier with access to daily stories and transcripts, insider access for bonus analysis and early access to interviews, and the leadership tier with exclusive vendor briefings, data reports, and behind-the-scenes insight into the channel. Every membership directly supports independent reporting and helps me continue bringing you research-driven coverage of the IT services industry. Again, that's businessof.tech/plus. If you have a question and are listening to the recording, send it in at question@mspradio.com. Thanks for joining me for the Business of Tech Lounge, and I will see you next time.